Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith at the table with
Ivan Ozerets.
And on the phone, we have Dave Anderson. And our guest is Dave Sivertson. Now, let's do this. Let's have Ivan say a few kind words. This man is so deserving of kind words. We had a classroom session where we went to YouTube and we played one of your matches where you won the national title. Go ahead, Ivan.
Dave, great to meet you via the telephone. Yeah, I watched your match, and it's I'd say nothing short of inspirational. Truly, I mean, it looked like pro tennis, but in slow motion. I had to constantly remind myself that these are the 65s. There's some drop shots that you got. I'm like, you move better than some of the juniors we have out here. I mean, you hit so deep, and there were actual rallies and patterns of play, and taking balls out of the air, serving and volleying. It looked like enjoyable tennis. It was enjoyable to watch, and I think players should really, of all ages, should just watch that. That was it was a treat. So I want to thank you, and I'm glad to be speaking with you.
Well, it was an interesting match. That was actually my first gold ball. I started kind of traveling and playing more for more of the gold ball tournament, starting its first year 65. So that was actually the first hardcore tournament that I played that was for a gold ball, and I happened to win that. So I was actually a little bit nervous there. I think my game's actually improved since then, but it was a fun match. I think I played against Bolton in that particular match, but I went back and looked at that match, and actually my game is probably much different now than it was then. But it was still, I go back and say, well, I did put a lot of balls in play, which is a big part of the game for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was June 2015 Irvine Tennis Club. I know I've spent some time teaching there. For our listeners, I first met Dave in the 1980s, where he would come in contributing to the USPTA, the leader of that organization, and we got as high as 15 people coming in to test students that we were training. But the last time was maybe 2 years ago at Boca West. I went to watch you where you were playing for Team USA.
Yeah, that was a great match. We were fortunate to win the gold medal there, and but that was a tough one. We had a little bit of rain off and on, and I had finished some singles, and I went in. We ended up playing, I think, the deciding doubles match against Austria, and Paul Wolf and I were able to get by that one, so it worked out pretty well for us.
No, it's great. I mean, what an honor to play for the U.S. I know Dave Anderson spent the most time with you. Want to say a few words, Dave? And I think what we could do, I think really divide this into two areas and maybe even come back a second time. Your book, Net Profits, and everything you've done as a tennis teaching professional. But I think if we could just focus on competition, how to be a better competitor. Because certainly we have coaches, players, and parents listening to these podcasts. But Dave Anderson, why don't you say a few words? I guess then we'll go with Coach Dave or Coach Anderson and Coach Sivertson. So we won't be going Dave and Dave. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fun for me to be on this tonight, especially with Coach Sivertson, with Dave Sivertson here. I don't think there's a day, or certainly not a couple of days, that go by here at the Academy where a reference to Coach Sivertson's fight and his ability to navigate a tennis match isn't mentioned. We can say this on the air now, but when Dave was working here in Dallas at a tennis club, he spent more time at Brookhaven, even though he was the director at the other place. And he had a profound impact on the kids that were around him. And, I think the most fun I've had playing the game of tennis certainly was about a 4 or 5 year period where Dave lived right by the club, Coach Sivertson did, and I lived right by the club, and we'd shoot a text and say 5 minutes and we'd be on the court and boom. And we did it, between 5, 6, 7 days a week at the end of our days. We talked about this a few weeks ago out in California, how, during the summer at the end of teaching all day, we'd be out on the clay or the hard. We had kind of a rule where we just played 3 sets most of the time, no matter what. So you'd always be ready. So when, we played a lot, and there were literally so many matches where one of us, at the end of the day would text the other one and say, "Hey, did you make it home okay?" Because we were both about ready to collapse. We didn't say anything during the course of the match ever. I don't remember ever having any communication. It was roll the balls out, play. We'd often play sets when we didn't even switch sides, just to build up. It was like we'd have 12 balls out there. But I don't think I've ever played a better competitor in my life. It was a great time to be able to experience in that. And I think, Dave, if you can offer some wisdom that you shared with our group out in the Easter Bowl tonight, primarily on, how you look to attack people. I think it'd be great tools for everybody to hear and take away.
Thanks, Dave. And you've heard me say this before. The most enjoyable 5 years of my life were really spending the time with you and the kids out there, and those kind of matches where, when we travel and play, the competitive matches aren't fun. They're grueling, and that's probably the difference. Is every time David and I played, we really didn't. We tried as hard as we could to win, but really the outcome didn't make any difference. We were still going to give each other a hug after the match, and that's really what the game is all about. And so, I count my blessings, mainly the 5 years I spent with Dave, but so many times the game brought such joy to my life. For me, I started traveling more and competing in the 65s. Before that, I played a lot with the tennis pros that I had and with the juniors that I had, and so I felt like I was in pretty good shape, but really didn't travel much until the 65s. And I was fortunate in the first year in the 65s. I think I won my first 5 tournaments, which got me off to a good start and got selected to the Team USA. And, through the years, and, it's been fun to kind of look at really kind of the gold ball aspect of the game, because it's not that easy to, it's not that easy to win a gold ball. And, my initial goal was to try to make the USA team every year. And then, after I won a couple of gold balls, then it was, okay, I'd like to win a gold singles ball on each of the main surfaces. So a couple of years ago, I did that, where I won singles gold balls on grass, hard courts, clay, and indoors as well.
Wow.
And then that couldn't have been done without the punishment that Dave Anderson gave me on a daily basis, for sure. But to be able to do something like that, it takes the right draw. It takes luck. It takes some health. Your mindset's got to be right, and you got to have some basic shots. You don't have to play great, but you have to be good, and your body's got to be in good shape. And again, you got to be a little bit lucky to be able to make that happen. But insight wise, how you do that or how you play well. I think it's changed over the years. For Team USA, I think I've probably been on maybe 7 or 8 teams, and I think we've won the gold medal 3 times, and I think a silver once and a bronze once or so. But it's playing in Europe is a little bit different, a little bit tough. I can remember the first year that I played in the 65s. I played a guy by the name of Camino from Spain, who was a 20-time world champion. And I remember for the first 45 minutes, I hit every single ball above my shoulders on my backhand side. Now, he saw that I was playing with a continental grip, and very difficult to hit a high ball up the backhand side. So he just kept punishing me over and over and trying to wear my arm down, wear my legs down. And it was like, boy, I sure learned a lot in that match. And I think every match that I've played, both internationally and throughout the U.S., I feel like I tried to learn something every time that I've played. I've had some good people that have given me some great advice and help. Dave Anderson's near the top of that list, but a guy by the name of Jimmy Parker. Jimmy's, I think he's at maybe 166 gold balls now. And Jimmy and I met on a subway in Madrid, Spain, and stayed in a hotel together for I think about a month or so, and then he invited me to come back to Houston. He and I worked together for several years and became really good friends over the years. But Kevin Kern, who was a Wimbledon finalist, was in Austin with me, and we hit a lot of balls there, and was fortunate to be able to go to South Africa with him and do a little bit of work with him down there, which was fun. Working for Rod Laver and Roy Emerson, we would finish our camps, and Emma would want to be going out to hit for another hour and a half, and I was kind of the only guy that really wanted to do that. So, there have been a lot of good people over the years that have been instrumental in kind of helping me, helping me along. So,
Coach Sivertson, how about the beginning? Take us back to the beginning now, when you first got connected to tennis and where the passion began.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I was in a neighborhood that, tennis was frowned upon. It's in Northern California, a little town called San Lorenzo, 26,000 people. And we had, a high school down the street that had 4 kind of dirty gray courts, and I think they had steel nets with handball courts on one side. And my neighbor right across the street, she had a ladies 45 national ranking or something. And she brought me out because I was a baseball player, and so I actually played baseball right-handed. I pitched right-handed, batted right-handed, and then it turned out to play tennis left-handed. And but she gave me my first Maureen Connolly racket, and went out and hit some balls with me. I didn't know what I was doing, and she didn't really tell me that much. I never really took any lessons, didn't belong to any club, and but I could run, and I could put a lot of balls in play, and I could compete, and those were probably the things that I did well. And I was number 7 on a terrible high school team, and then went from there to a junior and was number 2 on the team. And then by the time I was a senior, I was number 1 in the league. But I still remember my hand being all bloody from hitting ball after ball after ball after that, against that handball court. And it's just like, okay, that line is there, and I'm gonna hit it like a foot above that line every time and do the best I can. And so I finished and still had not ever played any USTA tournaments at all, but went to the local junior college, played for them, played kind of down, played number 5 for them, but I was 26-1. And it was just kind of just fighting and competing. And then by the time we finished our second year, my doubles partner and I had won the Northern California junior college doubles title, which then kind of vaulted me to Long Beach State and ended up with a scholarship down there. Went from there, had never played on clay, and went from there straight to Europe, and with the number 1 player from San Jose State, and that's where I ran into Jimmy and Steve Stefanki. I don't know, you probably know the Stefanki name. He was over there. Steve and I played some doubles together over there in Denmark and Finland and Turkey, and so it was just kind of continuing to work hard and play hard. And it was interesting. I was in the van because I went back in 75 to Europe, and I was in the back of a van with this guy. And he was a pretty good player. I mean, we played a tournament in Switzerland, and he won the tournament pretty easy. And I said, look, if this guy can't make it, how am I going to make it? Well, his name was Mark Edmondson, and this was 73, and in 1976 he won the Australian Open in singles and beat Newcomb in the finals. But okay, well, that's probably how he was good. But he had these big arms. Here I was playing with Continental grip and old technology and these small little arms, and it's like, okay, this was going to be a tough game. But it turned out to be pretty good. As you started to get into the seniors, that Continental grip actually worked pretty good. They had to keep the ball down on the grass, and turned out to be probably to my advantage to have that Continental grip. So it was all good.
Go ahead, Dave Anderson. Ask the question if you would.
I mean, I remember in the earlier part of your story a moment ago when you were playing your first World, David, and I think it's good for kids here, and you can correct me if my memory is off, but when you went to Spain and you played the guy, I believe he had beaten Connors, correct?
Yeah, he had beaten. Actually, they had two players there, Velasco and Camino. And yeah. Camino was the number one player who I played, and Velasco was their number two player who had beaten Connors in his day and age. But it had rained, and we waited for 8 hours, and then we went indoors, and it still was pouring down rain, and the clay was just so muddy, and it was just like a dirt battle. And I think, sometimes we think we have to play on, that perfect surface, and the windscreens have to be right. There's no wind, and there's no sun in our eyes. But this was kind of a down and dirty scenario, and I think that's what we find true, when we play different events, and I think that's great for the kids too to understand that. Look, the worse the conditions, if you can play into those conditions, you're going to learn an awful lot. And so I think that it's important. The resilience and the grit is such an important part in learning how to win.
How long did you stay with baseball? Did you convert to tennis full time?
Yeah. When I was the sophomore in high school, when I switched over to tennis, I stayed there forever. I didn't play any more baseball after that. And it was just like one focused. I mean, I can remember when I went to Long Beach State, I probably skipped a few classes because I had the combination lock where I could get to the balls on the tennis court, and I could go out and serve and drop and hit balls and hold my follow throughs and make sure my balance was good. But it was interesting. My junior year there, I played. I was captain of the team, but I played down. I think I played number 5 or something. And there was one guy in the team that played much higher than I did. As it turned out, I played one tournament I played the National 55 hard courts, and he was seated third in the hard courts there, and I wasn't seated at all, and I had to play him in the round of 16. I mean, they ended up beating him, and he couldn't believe it. It was crazy. So you never know. If you just keep working and you try to keep growing, you try to keep learning as much as you can, and sometimes things just come together. But it's kind of having that non-quit. It's that variable that everybody feels like you've got to have the perfect strokes and the perfect strategy. And obviously that helps. I've talked to Dave. I try to divide the game down into the 3 parts of the legs and the torso, from the waist to the shoulders, and the head. And with the legs, it's about working hard, being able to take that first step, anticipating what's going to happen, getting in that perfect position so you can step up to the ball. It's amazing how much of the time the players really work on an open stance forehand, but you're always going to have better control and really better power by getting in a better position to step up and get a swing and a step that goes much more towards your target. But that seems, I don't know, it seems like, a lot of players won't work and take that extra step to be able to do that. I know it's, for us, as we start getting older, it becomes more important that we step up in order to control time. I mean, controlling time is such a huge factor in this game. And it's something that I preach to all my kids, and it's something that I'm constantly aware of how much time I can take away from my opponent. And I do it. I do it through stepping up to take away time. I straighten my line out to take away time. I hit it deeper to take away time. And, if I have to hit it a little harder, I hit it a little harder. But, I really try to control time as much as possible.
Go ahead, Ivan. You have a question?
My question, it's great listening to you. It's like it's great hearing the same information from different sources. That's why I love having and being part of these podcasts, listening to David Anderson, guests we have on that are all under the same tree of knowledge, and basically say the same thing of preaching the physics of competent strokes that also relates to tactics. So it's just great listening to you guys. One thing I saw while watching your 65s final that I just had to point out to these juniors that we were helping chart the match with is your return on the backhand side. You'd underspin it, so you'd slice it pretty much every time, at least in that match you were, but it would land like inches away from the baseline every single time. And that's just what kind of obviously it's practice, but how much intent do you have behind every return?
Yeah, in that particular match, I actually gave a lot of air and just really worked on depth, and it neutralized anything that anybody could do with the serve. I mean, I play a lot of games within a game. So, for instance, I try to size up my opponent, and I try to win. I try to win the depth game. So I'm trying to look at it. So look, am I hitting the ball deeper than they're hitting it? And then I look at the position game. And I say, okay, am I stepping up more than they're stepping up? And so I try to keep, if they're just sitting 4 feet behind the baseline, just hitting ground strokes after ground strokes, if I can get 4 feet inside the baseline, it really allows me a chance to straighten out my line, to take away a substantial amount of time. I look at my margin game. How close are they playing to the lines versus how close I'm playing to the lines? Because the whole idea is to be able to play with larger margins. So somebody asked me, they said, "Look, if you played Roger Federer, who would win?" And my answer was, well, it actually depended on the size of the court. I mean, there's some point there where if the court he was hitting to was smaller, and I had a real large court, there's some point where I would beat him every time. And so the idea, in my opinion, the only time upsets occur is when you can get that better player hitting and playing consistently the small parts of the court while you're able to play the big parts of the court. And if that happened, you can create an upset. But you have to be aware of the size of the court you're giving them to hit to. I mean, I try to pretty much determine what part of the court I'm giving them to hit to and what part of the court I will take away from. I mean, I think that's a huge part of the game. I look at another part of the game, and when I look at my serve +1, and I look at my return +1, and what am I trying to do, and what type of position am I getting my opponent in, such that I can play off that. I don't necessarily have to win it off the serve, but if I can hit a serve that produces a bit of a short return, then it opens up some opportunities for me to step up that one extra step, straighten my line out, and to go ahead and play the ball deep with plenty of margin. But I work hard. I try to control my margins. If I'm in perfect position, I'll thin out my margin, and they're on a dead run. they'll put it back in play. Hopefully they're going to spin the ball too much, give me a short ball, it's going to kick up, and then I can go ahead and play to a big court. And I can hit the ball a little more offensively when I'm playing to a big court. Strike zone is another game that I play. Is how often are they within their strike zone? Are they hitting within their strike zone? And how often am I hitting within my strike zone? So I take a look at that and I'm saying, all right, where is the strike zone? Because I think every ball needs to be played between the waist and the shoulders. And so you got to get yourself in a position. And so I'm saying, all right, is the ball too far away from me, too close, too high, too low, too far behind me, too far in front of me? And that gives me the point that I'm trying to get to, and that's where the legs come in play. It gets me to that point where if I can play there, it allows me to drive the ball offensively using nice margins and producing that short ball coming back. That's why we're seeing, I try to get players to hit through the ball a little bit more. So they can still spin the ball, and they can use a lot of speed if they want the ball to jump or try to get out of the strike zone. But I'd much rather see them hit through the ball, because you get a lot of players, as soon as they get nervous, they cut it too thin, too much spin. What happens? Ball drops short, kicks up. I step up, drive right back through the ball. Be able to control it with good margins, because you always got to take a look at how thin your margins are. I keep thinking a number of years ago, I think I watched the finals of the Australian Open between Federer and Nadal. And I'm sorry, not Federer, Novak and Nadal. And Novak just tore him up. And the thing that impressed me is he was doing it with unbelievable margins. And that's the whole idea, is really trying to figure out how to win with large margins. And in order to do that, you've got to have excellent control of time. You get in trouble, you do what you have to try to get back on neutral. I'll tell you another real important point that I really look at. I try to break down, when I look at offensive, neutral, defensive, and I say, what percentage of each am I going to be hitting during the match? I actually have 0% on defensive, because what I'm anticipating is that if they hit an offensive shot to me, I'm going to put the ball back in a neutral position. I'm going to find a way to put it in neutral. Now, most players will, against an offensive shot, they're trying to hit their way out. I mean, they're either going to overplay, or they're going to do something that's going to cause them to lose the point. If I can get back to neutral, then I can get my legs working and get back and kind of redirect the point from there. So it's one of the things that I think I kind of look at.
No, that's great info. Go ahead, Coach Anderson.
Well, Dave, I've heard you talk about this many times. If you could maybe elaborate on, getting to 2-all and have done the necessary probing and do that.
Yeah, I look at. Ideally, I'm trying to find a strategy where I'm using percentages of the court. I'm looking at the percentages of my game, and I'm looking at the percentages of their game. What do they do well? What do they do poorly? And I try to use the first 4 games, somebody that I haven't played with, or you never know, somebody that you might have played before, but their game is different. I can tell you, players, if they're playing, let's say it's the first time they've been in the finals for a gold ball, they'll play much different than if you're playing them, somewhere else on something that's not important. So you do have to probe. And for me, I try to use the first 4 games, and I'm looking for worst case scenario, a 2-2 split, but really trying to come up with a 3-1 split to play the first 4 games. And in doing that, I try to test different shots, look characteristics of, try to figure out where the strengths are, how their movement is. But it still is going to come down to, as the match goes on, we're going to be able to see What we talk about those three areas. If we talk about the legs and the actual stroke itself, and we talk about the head, the legs and head especially will change dramatically. And as the legs start to become much more fatigued, against a good player, I do try to use the first 45 minutes. If I know it's going to be a tough match, I'm trying to use the first 45 minutes to take the legs out from under them. Because if you take the legs out from them, then the stroke is now outside the hitting zone, and their head is not where it needs to be. So you attack different parts of their game in order to produce weaknesses in other areas of their game. But it's for me, it's much more than, okay, I'm just trying to hit the ball back. I mean, it's much more intense than that. And that's what we loved about all the matches I played against Dave Anderson, is he knew exactly what my tendencies were. I knew exactly what his tendencies were, and we would have to counter before we hit the next shot, because we were looking for it. We knew what was going to happen. And I think the kids these days, they've got 10 or 20% of that kind of going on. It's like, oh, my forehand's not very good. Well, for us, that really didn't matter. I mean, we didn't really care if our shots were good or not, because we were going to figure out other ways to do it. And I think we need more of that. I mean, if you look at it, I think you look at the Pro Tour, the higher level players are the ones that have a tendency to go to that more often. The lower level players are just trying to hit their way out of it. I mean, I think we saw Jessica just won the tournament this week, and if you look at her semis and finals, she had periods in there where she was really struggling with the wind and everything, trying to even just kind of get the ball back in the court. But she somehow figured it out to kind of get through to be able to make that happen. And you've got to have the patience to be able to do that and recognize that everything that possibly could go wrong probably will go wrong on a tennis court from one day to the next. And you just prepare for that. I mean, you know what's going to happen. And so you adjust to it, and you recognize that you're going to adapt much better than your opponent's going to adapt. It's a competition, but it's not a competition of shots. There's so many other facets to the game, and that's why I said, I love playing David, because we're working on a lot of different facets that have nothing to do with hitting a tennis ball, and so that's one of the reasons I think it's so much fun.
Coach Sivertson, did you ever have any times where you were injured and were away from competing, maybe even from work?
Yeah, well, I think as you get older, you have to change your style of play a little bit. If we go back to the last 2 years, I don't think I've lost any match. The only match that I've lost was where I had I had some tennis elbow. I played the finals of the National Clay Courts in Florida, and went straight from there to Mallorca, Spain, to play the Worlds. And by the time I got off the plane, because I went straight from Florida to Mallorca, by the time I got off the plane, I could not hit a backhand past the service line. And so I had to actually, for the team championships there, I had to head to coach because I couldn't hit a single ball. And so it's the first time I really had tennis elbow. But and so I adjusted racket, adjusted string tension, and I don't have any problem at all. But I remember also the first time I had plantar fasciitis. Once you have it once, it's like, okay, you're off for 4 months, and you just never want it again. I'm susceptible on clay to calf injuries, because when you run up for drop shots and you plant the foot, you'll have that extra foot of slide that goes through. So, you have to make adjustments based on surface, based on conditions. based on kind of knowing your body. And then sometimes you just have to play through, different injuries where you're not going to feel, totally 100%. But, going back to kind of these gold ball tournaments, there are, it could be second round. I mean, by the time you get into the 16s, I mean, some of these draws are, 128. By the time you get to 16s, you're playing some pretty good players. And so it's like, okay, you're looking at their round before, what was their score? How much have they run? Do we need to run them more? Do we need to shorten the point? Do we need to lengthen the point? There's so much that needs to be looked at that can have an impact, on the results. One of the things that I do is I look for 2-point intervals. I mean, there's a way to justify why every single point is important. And, it's amazing how many of the kids and the older players too, how many points they just plain give away. And it's like, okay, no thought was given to it, and it didn't look like it was an important point. I try to play every point as if it's a very important point, but I do try to create 2-point intervals where I can get to 40 15s, 30 loves. If I'm down 15-30, I mean, I'm fighting like heck to get back to 30 all. But you have to step back and you have to say, okay, how important is this point? What am I going to do? What can I expect my opponent to do? And, it shouldn't be much of a mystery. I mean, if good players play in patterns, and you can use those patterns against players if you see them and start to recognize them. You can look at the pressure of a match. If I feel like somebody is affected by the pressure and we've got a really important point, that I might go ahead and go into his backhand, give him a small margin, but let him test to see if he can actually hit that shot or not. Somebody that is really, I mean, they're on top of their game, they're hitting well. I may not allow them to do that. I may just go ahead and stay in the backcourt rather than try to pressure them a little bit more. But you really don't have time to kind of get upset and bang your racket. There's too much going on to try to get ready for the next point. And as I said, I try to lay out, if it's my serve, where my serve's going, where the return's going to go, what my next shot's going to be, and what can I anticipate coming back. And I think you almost have to think that far ahead to be able to beat guys here and here. I mean, I've been in situations. I think it was this last year, the hard courts. I won the hard courts in the finals to beat Chris Bennett, who had won the grass and the indoors. But first round, I played a guy from Florida who I'd never heard of, didn't know, and before I knew it, I was down a set and a break. I think this was first round, and I was able to get through and win that match and kind of go through and ended up winning the tournament. But you just never know. You can't take players for granted. You have to show respect for the game, and you have to show respect for your opponent. And now we're kind of at that stage where everybody expects me to do a certain amount of advancing through the tournament, and so they're all kind of gunning for you a little bit, and so that changes things. I mean, in terms of how I feel when I get on the court. But I've been fortunate the last 10 years to play enough matches, high level and pressure type matches, where I really feel pretty good most of the time. The good news, this is my last year in the 70s. I get to go to the 75s next year, so that will be hopefully everybody's a step slower, and hopefully that'll be a little bit easier. But I think I just played the Wilson World Championships in January, and the guys that I beat in the quarter, semis, and finals were all brand new 65s that have come up. So there's a lot of good players that come up, and when you're kind of in the last year of your age division, it can be a little dicey, and there are a lot of people kind of going after you. So we just do the best we can and kind of move on from there.
Oh, that's great. Go ahead, Ivan.
Some more questions. Again, it's all from the match that I saw. We were coaching juniors out here, and they, from what you've just described, the competitive mindset, how to approach a match tactically. I really enjoyed it. I take notes as we do these podcasts, and I started one of the things you said, where you don't have time to bang your racket. There's so much going on. Like that's such a key piece of information, because some players out here, we tell them, you're not good enough to get mad. You haven't put in the time, the hours to get upset with yourself. And that line that you mentioned is just perfect. You don't have time to bang your racket. There's so much going on. Juniors sometimes don't even think about what's going on. It's just see ball, hit ball, and they're not really competing. They're just blindly hitting balls. So I really enjoyed that. So thank you.
Well, I think also that, the concept of energy management, I think that's an important concept that will start to come into play more and more. You're going to get excited out there, and maybe even in a negative way, but how do you get that back and kind of redirect it? There's I think our mind will not let us be angry and scared at the same time. So, some of the kids and even the pros, I think they're scared out there, but if they get angry, then they don't, it can kind of disguise the being scared part. And I think that the concept that I try to work with more and more is, yes, we want energy management. We want to take it high and when we need to, but this concept of being in a flow state, I feel like I've gotten into a position now when I play matches, I don't hear anything that's going on. I don't hear people on the sidelines. I don't hear anything. I'm just kind of in tune and immersed into what's happening on the court. And there are tasks that I'm trying to get accomplished. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you say, oh yeah, I won the match. Now the outcome comes into play. But the reality is, if you can stay in this flow state and you have 3, 4, 5 particular tasks that you're trying to get accomplished, and it becomes this little bit of this puzzle that you're trying to figure out. And then when your opponent throws this wrinkle into the puzzle, it's almost like a tongue in cheek. This is kind of interesting. How am I going to adapt to this? And there's so much more to the game than a lot of players put into it. And I think for me, over the last 10 years in these 65s and 70s, I'm playing all these different matches, and especially the European players, and the European clay is different than what's happening here. It's really a eye opener in saying, wait a minute, there's a lot more to this game than you think there is. And you have to go to these different places sometimes when necessary, because the forehand's not going to work, the serve's not going to work. It's just not going to. Everything is just not going to come out the way it's supposed to come out. And if you don't have different alternatives that you can go to, it makes it real difficult to stay calm. If you realize that you've got, a tool bag that has a couple different assets that you can use, then it starts to open up some options that may match up well with what you're seeing as an opponent. That's why, I think it's difficult for me to play a good player where I've never played him before. That's always going to be a little bit of a challenge. And, again, as I said, I try to attack them with the legs first, but oftentimes you can attack them with the mind. If a number of times in the World Championships, USA has been seeded number one. And if you're playing against another country that sees you as being seeded number one, you can kind of squeeze through some matches sometimes without having to play your best. And I think that's the whole idea, is that, look, it doesn't matter if you're playing the number one seed or, whoever it might be. If you can come back to this flow state and recognize what your strengths are, and feel comfortable doing that, I think you end up having your big chances. A lot of players will, they feel like they're overmatched, and so they start to go to these small parts of the court. If you're playing a good player, you got to figure out how to go to big parts of the court. Your margins have got to be big enough, and you got to take away time from them and get them frustrated, to be able to have a chance against a better player. But if somebody has a lot better strokes, I mean, how many matches have the kids played where they've already decided who's going to win the match right after the warm up? Because the one person warms up much better than the other person warms up, and it's like, okay, well, this is going to be a good. I hope I win a few games, kind of thing. And it's, if you can get the mindset changed to get out a lot of the noise that's out there and just kind of come down to some of the basic tasks that you're trying to perform and eliminate everything else, then I think you've got your best chance for the outcome that you want. But as we know, you're gonna play your best by having tasks and not focusing at all on outcome. Outcome takes care of itself. So we've so that's it. For me, I just try to get in my own little shell and try to do particular things. A lot of the early rounds, you just put some balls in play, and you don't have to do that much. But as I said, the bigger tournaments and the 16th, quarter, semis, and on, it takes a little bit of extra work.
Oh, that's great wisdom. Thank you, Coach Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, incredible wisdom. And, Dave, when I think of you, I think of adversity quotient, which, an AQ, a high AQ is critical in our sport and really in life, as you know. But I think of, Steve, and through his years, he had a T-shirt on the back of his, and this is more just a comment here, because you guys have so many, having been around Steve for 40 years and Dave, the time we shared, there's so many parallels, there's so many common denominators. And, but Steve's T-shirt said, no whining, no complaining, no excuses. And, I've never heard you come off the court, with anything other than just objective viewpoints on what happened. And it's a funny story because, Dave and I used to play every day, and then we didn't get to play. And so I headed out to California a few weeks ago, and we were going to try to play a match. And we were talking on the phone, and I said, I haven't really got to play since last February. I haven't got to play a tennis match or really hit. And he didn't say anything like, I'm sorry, or I'll pour you. His exact comment was, well, you should be very rested. And, I think that vantage point of, not allowing yourself to ever, have that poor me syndrome that is so easy to get in our sport. But two stories I wanted to ask you about. One, and it relates to having that growth mindset of always trying to get better. And you'll have to remind me if this is correct again. But I remember when you played the Spaniard, and, you could hit balls without missing forever. But you came back from that tournament very, you brought to the court that next day, I remember you had notes that you wanted to go through with me.
Yeah.
And you reviewed the notes with me, and you had concluded that you've got to do X, Y, and Z much, much better. And, a player at your level with your wisdom, and you were always seeking ways to get better. And, I remember feeding you green dot balls so you could develop a particular feel that you were trying to get with the racket on the ball, whether you were taking too much ball in your words, or trying to create more spin. You did so many little things that people just don't do, and then the constant. I think that no matter who it is, everybody needs to adopt that type of attitude. And how critical do you think it's been to your journey to kind of be a lifelong learner?
Yeah, well, I think it's essential. I mean, we're talking about that in life as well as tennis. And Dave, you and I have talked forever about, the common links between life and tennis. And I mean, the things that we can pull up that would be advantageous in life or parallel to what we're talking about from a tennis standpoint as well. I think when that lifelong learner, the growth mindset, the positive intelligence, I think you can take every situation and turn it around into a positive scenario. So there are a lot of life lessons that indeed are true. The sheet, it had about 9 or 10 things on it, and I actually ran across the sheet because I've got these piles here at the house of notes that I just keep making. When I'm watching, if I'm watching Olivia and streaming a match, it's playing, and I'll write notes and notes and notes and notes. So I've got these piles of notes here, but I ran across that list a couple months ago, and I went down the list, and it was like, okay, I'm doing everything on this list I'm doing. And that's what I'm saying is the match that you watched, the first match in the 65s, it's like, that's not really how I play anymore, and I'm a better player now than I was 10 years ago. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind with that, in practically every facet. And I think it may have started with, hey, the first year that I played for USA and I played Camino, and in our match he beat me I think 5-4. I felt like he hit tons of lines. It was 2 to 2.5 hours, and it started at 9:30 at night because we kept raining for the night. So it was indoors. The rain was still pounding. We'd split the singles 1-1. So I went in and had to play doubles. We played Velasco, the one that had beat Connors, and Camino. And they just kept throwing up lob after lob after lob, and I was and I couldn't remember scores. I had my partner was Lenny Wofford, and I said Lenny, I'm so delirious because we started the match at 11:30 at night, and the rain was still coming down, and the courts were all smog, and I literally could not keep score, and I was so drained and so exhausted from doing that. We won the first set, the tiebreaker, and we were at 3-all the second set, and I think I poached twice so early that they could almost just lay the ball down the line, and we ended up losing in 3 sets. And so we ended up with the bronze medal. They ended up playing Italy in the finals, and Camino won 1-love over his man. And so we looked at it, but I really came home as you mentioned, and I made a list, and I said, look, these are the things to compete internationally against some of these players that are really good. These are like the 8 or 10 things that I need to do. And as I said, I kind of found that list and went through it. And I say, look, I'm doing all those things. I'm very comfortable doing those things. So, wherever you are, there are ways that you can grow. But you got to look for them. You got to put it down. You got to work on it, and recognize that to get to where you want to get to, it's not an easy road, but it could be a very passionate road. It could be a fun road. And as I said, for me, the fun part of it was training and getting ready for these events. But the actual competing internationally, where you got USA on your back, and you're, they don't really care how you win. They just want, USA just wants you to win, and so you've got to use every trick in the, legal trick in the book to try to make that happen. And we've been real fortunate. 2017 was a great year for us. Larry Turbo is a legend down there in Florida. He and I played the singles for the U.S. And then Paul Wolf and Lenny Wofford. Paul and Lenny had not lost the doubles match in over 6 years. So we went into it as the number one seeds. And we didn't lose any matches. We won 15 matches in a row. Larry won all his singles matches, played great, beat the number one player in the world. I won my matches and they won theirs. So that was a special year. That was actually in Orlando at the USTA Center. But those are the kind of things that you remember, and for a number of reasons. One, I think the camaraderie. The tennis was good. The memories are good. And obviously with Larry passing on, we stayed in touch. I had only played Larry once in the finals of an event. But it just was something that's real special. And I think, the gold balls are special, but the team victories are the best. And, if you can go in with a good team and feel like you're going to be real competitive, that's pretty interesting and a lot of fun.
That's great. Dave, mentioned a second story, Dave Anderson.
Well, yeah, I think that, again, you'll have to correct me if I'm off on this story, but it just, I think that when kids play tournaments, they often aren't rational and they need a voice. And, you're your own man and all that. And, but I think that through countless hours we spent together for several years, I remember you hadn't lost much. And then I believe you went to Split, in Croatia to play, and you had a couple of losses back to back. Is that correct, Dave? Was it in Split or was that the Spain trip?
In Umag.
That's where it was. Yeah,
Croatia.
That's where it was.
And Croatia, we actually played. That's where I played the Spaniard in Croatia the first time. The second time we were back in Croatia, we actually won the gold there, and that was an interesting match because we were able to. Lenny Wofford was he beat me in the finals of an event, so we were able to put the order of strength with him at 1 and me at 2. He said so, we played. I think we played Australia in the semis. I won at number 2, and Lenny's objective was to keep their player out. He was the number 1 player in the world, to keep him out there. We had a number of 2 hours and 16 minutes, and we said, okay, we don't care if you win or lose the match, but you want to keep him out there 2 hours and 16 minutes. And Lenny fought, and and it went like 6-5, and he kept him out there for 2 hours and 50 minutes. And the number one player had to come back and play doubles. And we had a fresh team going out there, and they split sets, and he couldn't come out for the third set. He was cramping up so bad. And so that brought it into the finals, and we had a little bit of the same type of thing. I won at number 2. We asked Lenny to keep the player out there as long as he could, and then we ended up at a fresh team out there for doubles, and so we ended up winning the gold in that one. But it's interesting, there's stories and there's lessons to be learned in almost every situation you encounter. And it's if you just play and throw your bag in the car and leave without learning the lesson, you're going to have to learn it sometime. I mean, if you don't learn it then, you're going to have to learn it sometime in the future. So you might as well take advantage of every opportunity to learn a lesson. Whether you win a match or you lose a match, there's a lot to be learned on the tennis court. And so it's as I said, the USA matches are so much fun if you can get the right team together. And you kind of, for me, I had played all the teams we played on. I played singles in every match except for one. I think in 23, I played the deciding doubles match against Austria, where we won that one. But other than that, I've played straight singles across the board. And so I know that the country's counting on me, and it puts an added pressure on you. But it also, if you find yourself up for the task, then it's really, really rewarding. I remember that first year, before we played Spain, we played against England, and I played against a real seasoned player. And the thing that I found is, with all the pressure being a first year player, the tendency was to play more careful, to run harder with the legs, and then to be more careful with the shots. And and I was totally exhausted. I mean, my legs were about as exhausted as they could be. And I think the difference, looking at it now, is I don't have to play careful. I manage the game. I try to put the ball in awkward positions, but it's not just put the ball back and play. I think the match that you watched, the first match of the 65s, I just put a lot of balls in play. And so that's where I think the game is for me, it's kind of changed substantially. Yes, every ball was deep. I had pretty good control of the ball, but I tried to put the opponent in a pressure where, they would be missing shots. And I'm not so concerned about them missing shots as I am about making them, taking the legs out from under them, making them reach for the ball, making them mentally so uneasy about competing. I mean, it's interesting because if you can run somebody for the first 45 minutes, you can win that first set. A lot of times they'll give up. Now, internationally, they don't give up because they've got their country on their back. But it's interesting from a U.S. standpoint how you have more players that will give up. Now, they still play, but you got them. Internationally, you don't know that. They when you're playing in the team competition, they don't ever give up. But it is interesting to kind of see the difference and recognize that, all right, even if you've lost the first set, I don't really worry that much if I lose the first set. I mean, I don't want to lose the first set, but I've lost a lot of first sets, to be able to come back and do all right. So you can't panic. What did you learn in the first set, and what are the changes that you have to make to be able to, move forward to, stay out there for another, hour and a half or whatever's necessary. But it's not, there's no clock. It's not over till it's over. So you gotta be willing to kind of hang in there.
Dave Sivertson, you've 7 decades as a competitor. I like the line, live your life to win, live your life to compete. Could you talk a little bit about fitness and nutrition, what you do off the court to be in the position you're in?
Well, I'll tell you from a nutrition standpoint, I've changed what I'm eating. I mean, just from an inflammation standpoint, you want to get as much inflammation as you can out of your body, which means you eliminate, all the refined sugar, processed foods, the fried foods. You eliminate all the soft drinks. I mean, you just stick with water. And, as I said, I'm just kind of eating things that, a lot of fresh fruits. I'm not a big vegetable guy, but there's a lot of fresh fruits and oatmeals and eggs and things that I can hit or that I can eat that, I think's really, really helpful. I mean, I haven't, I played the the grass courts in Philadelphia. I guess it was either 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and was number 1 or number 2 seed. I don't know, but I was playing my quarterfinal match up 6-3, 5-3, and I started feeling really, really dizzy, and I hadn't felt that way really before. And so I tried to play a couple more games, but I wasn't doing real well. I thought, well, okay, well, if it's split sets, and I'd be able to sit down for a second and get back going. So, but at 2-1, I was gone, and I've gone down. The ambulance came and they took me away, and it was, for me, there were some diuretics in the blood pressure medication I was taking. So my blood pressure went down to 80/40, I think it was, but I don't remember the ambulance ride very much. And so, but those things happen. I mean, you've got to plan for the conditions. And I had won that tournament the 2 previous years, and so felt like I was ready. But with all the humidity and the wetness in the court, and I had played a pretty good match. The round before, in fact, I think I lost a tiebreaker, and then was up 6-love, 4-love when he went down. So, you never, you kind of never know. I think I've got to be careful. I mean, body wise now, as you start to get older, you got to think about how you need to adjust to be able to stay in the match. For me, most of my off-court training has been on the court. It's like if I'm going to work hard, I might as well work hard and also be hitting balls at the same time. So I don't really do a lot of off-court work. I have like 7 upper body exercises that I can do in the weight room, but I can get that done in like 30 minutes. And it just has to do more with range of motion, and I don't use a lot of heavy weights, but I just want to make sure my upper body functions the way it needs to function. The legs I do all on the court in terms of moving for balls and getting in best position and little steps in that. We do. I generally every morning. Kevin Conley is the director of tennis at the resort. We generally play every morning at 7:00, where we play baseline to baseline. And he knows my game. It's kind of like David. I mean, he knows my game so well. He's so quick on the court, and he uses the angles well that he could make me run long distances. So we'll play baseline to baseline to 11 and play up to 5 games. And in 45 minutes, to an hour, we're finished. And we're both totally exhausted. And I can get my on-court stuff done generally in that period of time. We've just switched over to clay because I'll fly out May 8th for the Worlds. But everything's on clay now. So, but we do the same thing. My serve, I don't really, if I practice my serve, I'll go out and I'll hit 50 serves, where I'll just work on my ball toss and balance and just pivot up on my back toe, and then I'll hit maybe 150 or 200 serves to four different parts of the court, just to make sure again my balance and ball toss is good, and then and that's really all I need from an upper body standpoint. So I like the competitive. I'm not very good in terms of liking to jog or run or do weights or that kind of stuff. I mean, I really prefer to compete, and if I can get my physical stuff done in a competitive environment, that's an ideal scenario for me.
Where are the Worlds played? Made where you travel?
They're normally in Europe, but they're actually in Florida this year. So they're going to be at Palm Beach Gardens.
You have to deal with some humidity coming from California, correct?
Yeah. We played in. I think as Steve said, I mean, he came over when we played in Boca,
right?
And again, we had the humidity there as well. We've got a really good team. I mean, I may end up playing doubles because we've got Dan Waldman, who's just moving up from the 65s, and he's really strong. I think he beat Mark Vines in one of the gold ball tournaments, I think last year, and I think Mark's got a win over him, but last year as well. But Danny's really good, and so we need to figure out how to win another point or two along the line here. But it should be really pretty interesting. So I'm actually the next week or two going to be playing a lot more doubles just because I haven't played that much doubles in the last few years. Most of the time, going back to that physical side, when I go into a gold ball tournament, I play singles only. I don't play doubles at all. And just physically, I want to make sure I'm 100% when I'm playing my singles match. And to play an extra hour and a half or two in doubles after that, when you're going for a gold ball, doesn't make sense. So whenever I travel for a gold ball tournament, I don't play any doubles, and make sure I've got 100% focused on the task at hand.
Oh, that's great. Let's do this. You've been so great with your time, but let's turn it over to Coach Dave Anderson asking Coach Dave Sivertson. When you ask, 2 or 3 more questions, that'd be great.
Yeah, the part about your fitness, Dave, I remember people when you started to make your run, and people would ask you, what are you doing? What kind of cross training? And you said, your cross training for tennis is tennis. And I always loved that line. But, one of the things that I think I remember as well when you pop in and want to hit with the kids in the academy, is, I'd often put you with like a 14-year-old girl. And, you had absolutely no problem. I still have the picture of you hitting balls with Robert Yang, when it was about 20 degrees outside.
Yep.
And he was 9 years old, and you made the workout productive no matter how far under level you were, because you always had your tasks you were working on. And I think for some of the listeners that may not appreciate senior tennis, or maybe don't have a exact idea of what it looks like, but I believe you were 67, Dave, and I had you play a kid in our program who was number 2 in Texas in boys 18, who had already signed to go play Division I tennis. He was playing. He played number 1 on that Division I team at Abilene Christian shortly after that. But it was a hot July day, August day in Texas, and you guys played outside, and he beat you, but I think it was 7-6 in the third. And if you could elaborate a little bit on why you preferred, because I had a wide range of players. I didn't often have you play the boys 18 person. You hit a lot of balls with them, but you always tended to get such a great workout with some of those younger players.
Yeah, and I think at that time too, I was trying to work out against players that were similar to those that I might come up against. And those boys 18s, as you know, they hit the ball so dang hard that it's like, well, I'm never gonna play anybody that hits the ball this hard. But those, my range in there was 14-year-old boy, good 14-year-old boys, and maybe 16-year-old girls. And right in that range where they put a lot of balls in play, they could run real well. Then it allowed me to kind of work my legs out. And again, I keep thinking about who's the college gal that went to, I think she went to Texas Tech.
Sydney Jones.
Yeah, Sydney Jones. So, but there were a number of college girls who hit the ball so big and much bigger than I could probably handle. But when I played them, it was the idea that, okay, if I could put a ball in an awkward spot for them, then it was going to be difficult for them. And just that challenge right there, and I think that's a message that we can use probably at all levels. It's, look, we're trying to put the ball in as awkward a position as we possibly can. If you don't do it against Sydney and some of these other gals you were having me play, it's pretty easy to get killed. They'll just step up and overpower you. But if you can get the ball in an awkward position, you bring them forward, you get them reaching, you get them off balance. The other thing I think that's overlooked is how important movement and body control is. And, we were talking a little bit about that with, a couple of players you're working with right now. But it's like, okay, movement is good. I mean, you can anticipate and get a quick first step, and you can do that. But the body control is so important. And a lot of I think the kids that are in that, probably more so even in the gals. I mean, you'll see fewer of them that'll have quite as good a body control in that 14 to 16-year-old range. And it's easy to kind of find a spot that makes them get into a bit of an awkward position. There's pretty good, boys that are athletes at, the 16s and 18s that really do have some good body control. That makes it a whole lot tougher. They're quicker and hit the ball harder, and it makes it tough. But I think under, it's something that I think more and more of the players have to work with is body control. Even if they're, ballet or balance, I keep talking to a couple of players about, Baryshnikov type moves on the tennis court. If you can get to a point where you make those adjustments, and especially as I said earlier, I would love to see more and more players be able to step up and get that foot moving more towards the target, rather than, if it's an open stance, it's probably going to be a neutral shot. Even if you hit it really hard, it's going to probably be a neutral shot, because you can't decrease your margin like you can by stepping up. I mean, you can really zero in on some good smaller margins without taking risk if you can step up and you're on balance. But so many of the, we get kids all the time that'll say, wait a minute, I've been watching, I'm watching these pros and they're hitting all this with open stance. scenario. And I'm thinking, well, the reason they're in an open stance is because their opponents put them in a position where they haven't been able to step up. And because if they could step up, it really changes the game in terms of their ability to control what's happening in the court, the ability to take time away, the ability to use smaller margins with a high level of confidence. It's huge. But yet we still see them move. Their movement is moving just in time so they can hit with the open stance, instead of making the adjustment where they can get in better position to be stepping up. Because I think that's one of the key secrets of the game is a higher percentage. This little gal, what's the new little gal that just came on?
Andreeva.
Well, she's another, but there was another one.
Yeah, from the Nadal Academy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. When she was ripping the ball, I was watching one of her matches. It was surprising the amount of times that she got that front foot out there. I mean, she was working hard to be able to step up, and it just did the world for her control, in my opinion. But it was like, oh my gosh, step up. I texted one of my students and I said, turn it on right now. Look at it. Look, they're stepping up. The steps going to the target. Let the body weight, let everything move right out to the target. Stay right in the hallway, going right out to your target. And so you got the power, you get the control, you get the balance, you got everything you need to get to. But you got to work to be able to get in a position to be able to do that. And the one of the things that is kind of on my list in terms of the games is, all right, how am I stepping up, and am I stepping up to the ball and get that foot out front? Am I doing that more than my opponent's doing that? Am I a step inside the baseline where my opponent's 4 feet behind the baseline? I try to stay very conscious about what's happening with that, because if I can step up and get a great position and have a lot of time, I can play with some really fine margins that'll open up the court for me. And I may not win it on that point, but I definitely got a good chance to win it on the next. Anyway, interesting though.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave Anderson.
Yeah, well, and along those lines, when you play down, I mean, I vividly remember you'd play many of these kids who, if you played in a particular style, you could go through them, but you would often hit right through the center of the court and let them, take you all over the court and challenge yourself in that manner. And that just doesn't happen much anymore, where a dominant player, superior player, can still get a tremendous workout, but you would put yourself in awkward spots on purpose by hitting to them, really inside of their strike zone when the level was really lopsided. And it's hard to convince juniors they can get that done.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of hitting down the middle, and whether it's return or serve or to be able, for me, I don't mind running a lot left and right. But for somebody that doesn't have the movement left or right, I mean, you've got to use center deep, a good percentage of time. I mean, you got to figure out how to make the game an up and back game rather than a left and right game. I've got students who just they have to play. They're going to have to play up and back. So you've got to create situations that allow you to be able to get up and back. Well, one of the things that came to mind is no matter what you're doing, the question is, what are you working on and what are you learning from it? And what I was thinking about, one of the gals that I was hitting with at Brookhaven there, and we were going, how many rallies could we go without missing? And it was one of those young girls, and I remember we were close to 800 rallies without a miss.
It was Melissa.
Yeah, anyway, but it was the idea that, look, hey, good focus, good rhythm, good tempo, and it was like, I mean, that's the most rallies I've ever done in my life. And
actually, David, was Rachel Whittington. I stand corrected.
Yes, it was Rachel, because Rachel was one that, it was hard to get her focused sometimes.
She was emotional.
Yes. And so the idea was, okay, let's see how many of these we could do, and we'll keep, from an emotional standpoint, we'll work with the stability, both with the shot and the movement, and also emotionally. So we're really going back to kind of what I was saying before, with when you look at the legs and you look at the mid body and you look at the head. That particular exercise kind of got us into a position where we could work on all three of those. And I think that's where you have to kind of pick and choose, where, when you're doing a self-assessment, or self-awareness. I mean, I think those two are different. The self-awareness, the question is, how much do the kids really know about their own games? And then you say, well, if they don't know that much about their own games, how much could they possibly know about their opponent's game? And I think both of those are going to be essential. And then you've got the assessment part, where you could do something that will allow them to measure, and find out what's really true and what's really not true about particular aspects of their games. But probing, I think, is, for the kids especially coming up, is really important, and to really get a feel for what's going through their mind. What do they really know about their own games, and what do they know about the game of tennis? I mean, there's a whole area that you can explain to them, but they're not going to see it until they see it. I mean, it's really interesting. We know how much of the time all of us have spent explaining something to them, but them saying, "Oh yeah, I understand," and "Okay, I'm going to do it," but don't really get a feel for what it really is. And there's so many facets to this game, and that's what makes it, I think, really interesting. If you can, as I said, go to the different tools and options that are available to figure out, how to win a tennis match. Because there are a high percentage of players out there are very singular in what they do, and they gravitate back to what feels the most comfortable. And it's really a great game. And so but you got, for me, it's like, okay, I got to be in shape, I got to be ready, and but I feel like, strokes are fine. I feel like the head's fine. You just got to keep the legs where they need to be.
Coach Sivertson, we always say we're trying to help people with a tennis treasure chest, and you're certainly sharing all these golden nuggets. I mean, just the buzzwords, the phrases, the mind vitamins, certainly a lot of note-taking. But yeah, you've been so generous with your time. Dave Anderson, why don't you ask him one more question, and then we'll sign off. This has been great, though.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Who had the winning record at the end of the day to this point, you or me?
Oh, I'm sure you did.
I'm just kidding you. No, I was going to, on a serious note, I was going to ask you, how critical, I know your wife, Jeannie, and she did that personality testing on me. How critical has she been as a support system through your journey as a player?
Oh, you got to have it. I mean, and I'm sure you guys are aware how important and the role that the spouse plays. She knows the players and the players' wives better than I do. I mean, she loves the trip. She goes on every trip we go on. She goes and she loves it, and she spends time with she spends as much time with the players as she does with the wives of the players. And so they all know her, and then wherever we go, then she'll take in the sights. She's a little bit more of a tourist than I am, and but I try to accommodate her as much as I can. But being injured, we were almost 4 weeks in Spain, in Mallorca, and I couldn't play. So we did a lot of sightseeing in Majorca, which was good. But Corfu was great, and most of those trips too. We went Corfu to play, but then we went to Venice for a week after that, and then the next time to Corfu, we went to Rome for a week. And so, I mean, being able to travel and see all these different cultures, and we've got friends, in Austria and Spain and different places. I mean, you just can't beat that. I think for me, even just from a growing up standpoint, I was pretty much of a homebody, through college, and then all of a sudden, to go to Europe, right after the NCAA's, it was really a great maturing process. And I was there for, I think, 7 months, the first trip over. And then I went back 2 years later for another 6 months and played there. But the cultures and the whole growing up and learning about life was phenomenal. When we made those kind of trips. But no, she's on me about in terms of what I eat. And I mean, when I say on me, she said, what do you want? Do you want chicken breast? What do you want? Whatever you want. She'll make whatever I want. So she takes great care of me. Loves to travel, and couldn't do it without her. Wouldn't be near as much fun without her. So
Dave Anderson, thanks for that question. That's
yeah,
that really adds to this podcast for sure. How's it go? Behind every successful man, there's a successful woman. But that's not how you say it. It's behind every successful man, there's a surprised mother-in-law. But no, I think that if we get on another time, and I know I lent your book Net Results to a club owner, and I never got that book back. But you're on the other side, your career as a tennis director, tennis teaching professional. It'd be great to talk to you about that. But I think if we do that, I mean, we probably, I know Coach Anderson and I would, Ivan as well, we'd slide back into tennis the sport, because tennis the sport is more exciting than tennis the business. But no, there's just so many things. I mean, to ask you about Emerson or Laver. I don't know that much about Steve Stefanski. We used to have a videotape when Dave and I were first studying tennis together in the 80s. That's Steve Stefanski. He was on Balance. I don't remember that. What were you going to say about Welby?
Dave spent some time around him. We can talk about that.
This is real interesting. Is I had never met Welby Van Horn, and I was teaching a lesson at Mission Hills, and I was teaching, and I was talking to him about balance, and there was a guy standing on the side who I didn't know why he was standing there. Like I said, but he was just standing there, kind of listening and everything, and so I finished the lesson and walked off. He said, "Hey, I want to introduce myself. I'm Welby Van Horn." I said, "Oh," I said, I know the name. I said, "But I've never had the pleasure to meet you." And that he said, "Yeah." He said, "I was listening to your lesson." He said, "You're talking so much about balance." He said, "I think balance is the whole key to playing this game well." And he said, I'm writing a book." He said, "I've written the first 4 chapters." He said, "Will you read it and just tell me what you think?" And I said, "It'd be my pleasure to do that." So yeah, anyway, but that was my introduction to Welby Van Horn. And he obviously is a legend, and he's done so much for the game. And if you go to Indian Wells, you'll see up on the backboard a plaque. The plaque will say Welby. I think it's called Welby's Wall, and there's a plaque there with Welby Van Horn that talks about a little bit about the balance. But interesting story.
No, it's a great story. But Dave, Yvonne, our listeners, thank you so much. It's been great. We want to do it again on the business side, but also to circle back and talk about more of the sport. But golden nugget after golden nugget. So, Coach Sivertson, thank you so much.
Perfect. My pleasure, guys.
Yeah, it's been great. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
you bet.
Yeah, everyone, thanks so much, and listeners, thank you. All right.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
For the love of tennis. Adios, amigos.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Wow, wow, wow. I really enjoyed that. That's where we tell people, get the link. And I know kids have so much to do with their schoolwork. I always say do the schoolwork first, but boom, did you hear that golden nugget? But speaking of Welby used to always ask people, everybody he would meet, he said, how do you develop a tennis mind? So we're so fortunate to listen to Coach Sivertson, 7 decades as a competitor. And it's amazing how he said, I'm still getting better. But that's great. Anyway, thanks. Another podcast in the books.